Good evening, and welcome to Africa's Vision Network. This is part 2 of the show we showed you last time. Now, I begged, and I cried, and I pleaded with the producer, and so we're still on with these fabulous two guys who has given us such great insight into black literature. And we're going to actually discuss some of black literature now, because last time we were talking about hip-hop, which erupted into overflow, and so we're going to now try to talk about literature. And we have with us Kwame Alexander and Omar Tari. So we're so glad to have you. And during the interim between the two shows, Omar started talking about him and Kwame being 45 years old, right, and how important it was. And then we were cut off. I want you to talk more.
We're not 45 now.
No, are we? No.
But we'll be 45 in about 14, 13
now,
years.
You tell me, what's the vision there?
Right, well, you look at the African structure, the older you got, the more power you're supposed to have in the community. It's the council of the elders. But if we look at the African-American structure, it seems like the older you get, the more out of touch you get with the community. You know, so I said to Kwame, you know, if we can get 45 and continue to have some influence in the culture, and the thing that kind of stops a lot of older people, the new culture is always going to be something different from what you're used to.
Yes.
You know, because of course the rap music that we were coming up with, it wasn't the same stuff that we're listening to now. Yeah. But as long as you keep your ties with that younger group, you can influence them in some ways. So that's going to be very important to keep your ties in the culture that you came from. Right. You know, so if we're in the literary culture, if we're going to stay true to it, we should never leave it. Right. You know, and always have some kind of tie to the younger people who are going to be writing, you know, 10 and 20 and 30 years from now.
Right. Sure. And that's going to take you being very open-minded, because you're going to come across young people and they're going to write, and you're going to, whether you like it or not, you guys are going to really be 45 and you're going to think like me, what is that? Right. And so you're going to have to really be, you know, open-minded, don't you think?
Well, one of the things I do is I go into schools and I talk to students, and I do perform poetry, and I'll read to them. And this is from Head Start 2, 3-year-olds on up to high school students. And you know, that's one way that I try to maintain some type of connection with what the young folks are thinking about, with what they're talking about. And you know, one of the things that I discovered in the elementary, junior, and high schools is that most of the kids knew Tupac. Most knew his music, listened to him, you know, just fanatically. And you know, 60-70% of them thought he was still alive. And you know, when you talk to the elders, you know, when you talk to the older people in our community, you know, they didn't feel Tupac. They weren't really interested in him, or he was, you know, a negative influence or impact. But their children are listening to him, and so that's something we need to address. Which is, you know, the reason why, you know, I decided to write the play, so that we could address those things. And so it's like Omar said, it's important to stay in connection with what the ideas and ideals of the younger generation are, because you know, we complain often because we don't get the type of attention that we want from the elders, you know, but we have to earn it, and they will give it. And the same token, we're going to have to remember that, you know, when we become that age. Exactly.
And be open-minded enough to hear.
I think what's important too for those guys to be able to understand the old stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and that was another thing, you know, with Kwame and I both being the scholars that we are, we understand the older stuff. So I start talking about older writers, you know, Chester Himes, how I love his work, and Richard Wright, you know, how I love his work, and, you know, Iceberg Slim and Donald Goines, which you're only talking about 20 years from now. Right. And you get these younger writers, they're like, who's that? And I'm like, oh, my God. You know, so even though we're going to have to, you know, go back to the younger group, they're going to have to sit down with us and let us say, look, this what was hip during our time. Because that's also important to be able to, you know, to see the past that way. You know, so it's important to keep all of it kind of connected, flowing from the past and the future.
Sure.
Now, talking about what you're doing with your publishing company, tell us about your latest product.
Omar mentioned Chester Himes, a mystery writer, and what a lot of publishers wanted to, they deemed him as a pulp fiction writer. But we recently published a mystery writer, a young brother from Chicago named Tony Lindsay, and his book is called One Dead Preacher. And it's a mystery novel written in the tradition of what Chester Himes wrote, and it's also has a contemporary flair to it. So he's sort of sharing the same stage as a younger version of a Walter Mosley. But it was our goal to publish mystery novels. We published a mystery novel in 1990. 1997, and it was a novel about a woman who comes home from work one day and sees a car in the driveway that isn't her husband's, along with his car. And so she walks into the house, calls his name, he isn't there, goes downstairs, doesn't hear anything, starts walking up the stairs, and as she's going up the stairs, she hears these noises coming from her bedroom. And so she opens the door, and what she sees in the room drives her to a psychotic state. And throughout the rest of the novel, she begins to take revenge on what she saw. In addition to what she did see, she saw her child sitting in the corner watching this fiasco take place. So it was a very odd mystery, but it got a very well response from the audience.
Yeah, you might want to see that book.
Yeah, and so we decided we were going to continue to publish that genre, to publish some on-the-edge urban mystery fiction. And we also publish poetry. Okay. We have a poetry series called the Black Words Poetry Series, and we do some creative nonfiction.
And you had a CD.
Oh yeah, one of our, like I said, we got started in this whole publishing thing because I was a starving poet who couldn't get published. And so that's sort of our first love, is to publish poetry. Right. One of the things that we decided 2 years ago is that we wanted to do a CD, kind of fuse the poetry with some jazz, with some hip hop. And that's, Omar has actually done an album. Many people don't know that, but he's done a hip hop album that maybe he'll tell you a little bit about. But so we decided to do a poetry jazz CD, and it has Sonia Sanchez on it, Hakeem Madhubuti, Fertile Ground, Raz Baraka, who's Amiri Baraka's son, Tanya Matthews, and quite a few other people. So it's sort of our goal to become this black Motown of literature,
of course.
To begin to publish books en masse and to begin to produce poetry and spoken word CDs. But most importantly, like we talked about in the last show, is to really take this to the next level and establish some distribution, which I think is the key to really being successful in publishing. You have to have the distribution.
So tell us a little bit more about what you think the direction of black literature is. Here, people, I know there was a time, I guess 10 years ago, black people are not going to read.
Books.
They're not going to read, and then now they found out that we are. What is the direction? What is happening?
Well, I was listening to a hip-hop album recently from a young guy who actually is a poet, Mos Def, out of Brooklyn, New York. And his leading track, he came out and he said, well, people ask me, what's the direction of hip-hop? And he said, the direction of hip-hop is whatever direction we're in as a people. So I said, well, that's the same thing with any culture.
Yeah.
Whatever direction we are going in as a people, the art will follow that direction. So I said, well, it depends on what we're listening to, what we're wanting to read, what we're interested in. That's going to be the new 2002, 2003, 2004 work. And so, I have a sequel to Fly Girl coming out called For the Love of Money, coming out this August. And that's my lead-in book. I'm going to go back to the young culture and try to, if I can't educate the older individuals because I look too young, or these individuals don't want to hear that black stuff from back in the day, then I'll go back to the younger culture who are looking for realistic material. When you think about the culture that they're into, the hip-hop, they want realism. And so this is the rightful culture for me to go back to the young people and say, well, I'll give you some realism with some thought behind it, some intelligence behind it. And then they have gravitated toward that very much so with the Fly Girl book. So my direction is to go back to the youth and then recreate a readership that's more conscious than the one that I just started, or just came about with the whole relationship thing. So my thing is to go back and get those young people and start to instill some, literature that's going to be a little different from the stuff that their mothers and aunts and stuff are reading.
On a different level, I think that the poetry, the literature, should dictate what the future is going to be. I think that
like a prophecy.
Well, sort of like a path, a map. Our writing should offer some identity. It should offer some direction. It should chart a course for us. And I think that's one of my goals as a writer and as a publisher, is to publish work that is going to offer something, that's going to make someone change or make someone think about changing. And so I think the writing, the literature, when you talked about what direction, I think that the writing and the literature is going to have to chart that direction. It's going to have to chart that course, whatever that may be. And I think it's important for us as writers to have that level of consciousness, to realize that we have that kind of power to do that. and to then begin to take that into consideration when we write our novels,
Right.
when we write our poetry, when we write our plays, when we write our screenplays, because inevitably life will be the result of what we create and through our writing and our expression.
Well, that leads right into what I'm doing, you know, with the young people.
Yeah.
You know, because my thing was, you know, if the older people were looking at my work and saying, well, I'm already a mother, you know, I already have my man, you know, so my work was kind of like, okay, I can't get to his work because he's talking about stuff that I've already done. So with me going back to the younger people, then I can become the light because they haven't done it yet.
Exactly.
You know, so it's just perfect, you know, that for me to go back to that and say, this is a group that I need to concentrate on because I'm still thinking about the light.
Yes.
You know, and I'm not past my prime.
Yes.
You know, so while I'm in my prime, I need to go to people who are not yet in theirs and get them ready for theirs.
Yes.
So yeah, Kwame has definitely the right idea.
Right.
They say that where there's no light, the people will perish.
That's true.
You know, so let me bring light to the darkness. You know,
right.
yeah, that's dynamite.
Do you think this is, in the introduction of the last part one of this show, I talked about you being like a Renaissance man, like we had during the Harlem Renaissance. Do you think that this is happening? We're experiencing a cultural renaissance?
Well, I think it's all one continuum. I think we put labels on it to sell product, to sell books. But I do think there is sort of a plethora of black writers who are being published now compared to 5 years ago.
Right.
And I think that more and more people are being exposed to black literature via the internet and other channels. So I think that you do have more writers who are getting awareness and who are getting access into the media and into the people, to the community. But I also think that when you look at, for example, when you look at the Harlem Renaissance, and we know about Langston Hughes, and we know about Claude McKay, and we know about Countee Cullen, we know about Zora, we know about these people. What about the hundreds of other people that we don't know about? You know, so we tend to put this, you know, label, which is okay, you know, in terms of academics and studying and being able to study these phases, because I do think they are phases in our culture, and we see the continuum, you know, because it is one continuum. But what about the hundreds of writers who were writing during that time period and the exposure that they didn't get? And so I think what you have now is you have a lot more media savvy and a lot more hype going on. And I think it's important for us to distinguish what is hype and what is, you know, sort of just a part of that continuum of
we don't leave anybody
That's
behind.
why I have my new goal of publishing at least 20 books. So, you know,
the rate you going, you will.
Crime has been around me lately, and that, you know, that's what I've been telling people. I have to focus on keeping the work coming, because once this thing is over, that people keep saying, "Oh, it's going to be over soon." I want to make sure that I have a whole shelf that says Omar Tyree, and that's not going to be over with for me.
Right.
And so it's important that, you know, you don't get caught up into this whole superficiality of being a super, you know, author at the time, and keep doing your work.
Right.
You know, so that's important. You have something to say. It shouldn't fade away tomorrow.
Right.
You know, you should have something to say tomorrow too. You know, so that's what I'm looking at. How long is it going to last, and who's going to be the authors who are going to come out of it and still be here?
Right.
And I'm definitely going to be one of them. You know, so you have to set yourself up and to know that the work is what's going to keep you here. The hype is going to fade.
Right.
You know, and say, oh yeah, he was big doing, you know, so and so. What happened to him now? Oh, I don't know what happened to, you know. So you have to get past the hype and just deal with the work.
And that's where true literature, you know, stands apart. When you talk about writers who are who have a serious sort of a serious intention of what they're doing, and who are very serious about what they're doing, and who have something to say. And I think when, you know, 50 years, 100 years from now, when our great grandchildren are reading about the writers who are from this generation, we have to, you know, be very serious in terms of looking at who are those writers going to be. You know, who are the writers in the future going to remember from our generation. And that's important, because everything that's good and accomplished and remembered in this world takes work. And you have to be about work. It can't be about just this hype.
Yeah, and it's important to have that great spirit behind it, because I feel as storytellers, we are priests and priestesses in a way, sort of guide, like you're saying, guide the next generation. And we have them in our hand. Now they're reading our books or looking at our plays. We've got them in our hand. Now what are we going to do with them? Because see what the movie theater, what the Broadway Hollywood is doing is it's got some evil behind it. It's got some. That's why we got plays that and movies that these children are going out and doing crazy things after they see it. So we do have that responsibility. Do you see us getting an award-winning dramas and plays. Like I hear you talking about screenplays and moving in that direction. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it may take 3 years, every 3 years or so.
Yeah.
But I think what we need to do is establish our own award system.
Okay.
And I've been talking about this in literature. One of the things that, constantly got on my nerves with this whole bestseller thing, because it's such an ambiguous term. One person sells 20,000 books, and since he knows the right person, he gets on the best. And I'm looking at, this is ridiculous here. So I looked at it, we should have some type of award ceremony that actually awards individuals who have done great creative work, or awards the numbers work, or whatever, so we can have some real parameters of what we're trying to do here. Because every person walking around talking about, I'm a bestseller, I mean, it kind of gets everything confused there.
There's hundreds of best-selling lists.
Yeah.
So, we need to have some real parameters, and I think we need to have our own award system for Hollywood. We got the Soul Train Awards, for music, but we need to have our own literary awards as well.
Yes.
Where we judge our own work.
Yes.
See, I'm not too concerned. I mean, I think it's a relevant point. I'm not too concerned with awards.
Yeah.
And award, you asked the question, are we going to have any award-winning dramas? Are we going to have any compelling stories? Are we going to have any Things Fall Apart? For the millennium? Are we going to have any soldier story? Are we going to have some compelling dramas that take us somewhere? We talked about that offer us something.
The thing that's funny when I look at that, I ask myself, well, how did those works become that great? Was it just great work? Well, we know it's great work, but then I look at it and I say, how many works do we have out right now, Kwame, that could be that next one that we don't know about because of the media attention now? Like you said earlier, it's such a game that you can have an excellent workout right now and that person gets no media attention and we walking right past it every day. And that's the problem that we have right now. We have so much, highlights on the wrong things that the right things just slip right past us.
And then just thinking about Things Fall Apart, how do you think this black literature going on in America is influencing the international community?
Well, that's my next goal, actually. Right now, another thing I talk about a lot, which Kwame has heard, the lack of male readership in this country. And so I have some books coming down the pike that are going to be very political and maleized. And so I said, well, if I can't get the readership here, if I can't get the readership here, I'm going to have to take it international, because the international movement has always recognized greater work more so than America. We are the hype masters of the world. But if you go to the international scenery, they're still going to look at it and say, what does this work have to say to our people? And we don't care about that extra hype stuff. We want the work in itself. And so my next thing was, when I get a couple more years down the road, if we still don't have that male readership for the next work I'm going to start writing, then I'm going to start going to Africa, China, Japan, Brazil, Spain, France, and start doing my thing that way. And that way we can increase the work. And then you also had the website stuff, so I have my website set up too.
Yes.
Oh, I think that one of the things that has inspired me as a writer has been great works that have been written by African writers. Things Fall Apart, 2000 Seasons, The Healers, and they have been very inspirational for a lot of writers over here. I think that hopefully we will begin to encourage and begin to make aware those types of works for writers in this country. Relative to the internet and what it's done for black literature over here and how it's moved this globally. I mean, my company on our website, blackwords.com, gets orders and interest from all over the country, from Sweden to South Africa. I mean, it's amazing. So I think that that the doors will continue to open up even more for writing and literature that is available in Africa particularly.
When Omar was talking about moving on into other countries, it reminded me of, again, that word Renaissance. And during that time, the writers did go to Europe and musicians.
And again, it was because of lack of attention in America. When you look at Richard Wright, which I always look at Richard Wright as he's like the perfect image of it, you know what I mean, or older me. Because he was serious too. He was very serious. And, they started to look at his work and say, hey, why don't you stop complaining, Richard? And he said, look, if you guys aren't going to take the work seriously, I'm going to go somewhere where they're taking it seriously. And so he exiled himself from America because it just wasn't the type of atmosphere that was proactive the way he wanted it. You know, so yeah, I mean, I look at Richard Wright and say, you know, I'm in that same line where in the next couple of years, I'm going to finish up my journalistic work on a couple other fields, and then once I start to get to this other work, if we don't accept it, I'm still going to say it, and I'm going to take it somewhere else, because I got to get it out there. You know, it's a part of, you know, who I am.
Right. Right.
Has to be said.
And in talking about marketing and this problem we have about distribution, how do you see now this article from the woman in prison, or the librarian? You know, that really struck me, because how now are we going to market this black literature into the rural communities? How do you see that moving?
Well, again, you have that internet thing, and you know, the countries are going to start. I get mails from Germany. I'm sure Kwame gets some mail. I get mails from a lot of brothers and sisters who are in Britain. You know, you got the Canadian connection. You know, so I think as the computers begin to spread a little more, then, you know, my thing is I'm going to go ahead and cross over into those other mediums of music and film, and then we have those channels that get out there. But I think the biggest thing is going to be actually going there. You know, I'm going to make trips to Africa and Brazil and Canada. You know, so that stuff's going to come down the pike, where I'm going to stop doing national tours and start doing international tours. And with my style of lecture and speech, I know I can fire up some people, you know, because, you know, my whole style is still that passion system, you know, where they may not look at it over here. They just look at, oh, well, he's, you know, angry. But I go somewhere else, and they're like, yeah, we're used to that kind of passion. So, you know, I can't wait. You know, I'm just going to, you know, sit on it and go ahead and do it, you know, get my international plane tickets.
You flying out, Kwame?
Right on.
You ready to fly with him?
I've actually been overseas.
You have? Okay.
Quite a bit.
What was the reaction, or what was your?
Well, particularly in Britain, the response was just, you know, it was amazing.
Wow.
You know? And it's interesting because in Britain, folks are 20 years behind where we are, and so it's a very passionate, political, just aggressive type of atmosphere, type
this
of environment. This is
among black. Do I call them black Brits?
Yeah, black Brits. Yeah, and so
they're political.
Yeah, it's a passion for what we're doing over here. So and I think that's definitely an avenue that we're going to continue to explore, just around the world.
Right. I should think the internet is just like blowing you guys, I mean, out there. So
yeah, the internet's great. You know, the thing about it is the internet isn't everywhere. And you talk about some of the rural places.
That's what I'm thinking.
And I think that we're going to have to adapt, you know, this whole Master P sort of philosophy and attitude, and really get out and get, you know, and take this distribution thing to a very grassroots level, because that's how he started.
You got to go there.
You got to travel.
Yeah, really got to make it to these places.
With books.
But the internet, you know, on another level, is the great equalizer, and it will allow you to do some things that we couldn't have done, you know, 10 years ago. But you're going to have to couple that with meeting the people, with interacting with.
You still need that facilitation of the internet.
And it's that one-on-one. That one-on-one makes people, you know, makes people feel good.
Human touch, that you cared enough to be there with them.
Right. Just like we're here with you today.
Yes. And I cannot believe we've got like 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Can you believe it?
Well, that was great. You know, we got 2 shows in.
We got it done, but we got it done.
We got just
I want you to end with, you know, tell us some words of wisdom you have for our viewers about literature, about us as a people, about how we're fitting in this.
Well, I'll let Kwame start, and I'll be the counterpuncher.
Look out,
I'll say 2 things.
Yeah.
The first thing I'll say is, get the book. One Dead Preacher.
Yes,
new mystery novel from Black Words.
Yeah.
And you can check us out on the web at blackwords.com.
All right.
And then I'll leave you with a poem I wrote for my daughter who wanted to know what it meant to be black. And so I told her, ebony trap, dark black and lovely brown, mocha jumping double black brown, night black, out of sight black, so black, purple black, blue black, 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 black, brown, Moroccan, mellow, yellow, black, brown, positive, chocolate, black, free black, free black, free black images.
Woo! We love it. Thank you.
That's dynamite. That's the words from the poet.
Yes.
Yeah, so with him leading on the poetry, I said I would counterpunch. So I will go ahead and open up this poem, which I have in my new book coming out in August, For the Love of Money, the sequel to Fly Girl. And she has this poem in which she's trapped in that whole Hollywood system. And she writes this poem called Love/Money. And she says that I never wrote a poem in my life strictly to get paid. I just do it as beautiful images of me. But if I ever do decide to publish this poetry, it won't be for free. Nevertheless, is the price you pay for creativity the only thing that people see? Capitalistic success, that torturous irony. And so she talks about this whole dichotomy of making money or making true art. And that's the thing that we're going to have to fight, both Kwame and I and all artists. Are you going to make art that's going to inspire the people, or are you just going to make art that's going to make the people that put your artwork out paid, you know, along with yourself? Right.
Wow. It's really important.
Oh, yeah.
It is important. And we're really glad that you could come
Right on.
and come again.
Right on.
And we hope that you will come again.
We look forward to coming back for part 3.
Yes, indeed. I will be searching you guys out. I think everybody in our crew is like, oh, we're going to follow them.
Right
So we're going to be searching you out. We're going to be buying the books like we promised. And audience, I know you enjoyed this second part. We're glad we could bring it to you. Please join us again the next time we have Africa's Vision Network.
Throughout the world, in many of the poorest countries, there is a wonderful organization called Child Reach that is making a profound difference in the lives of children just like these. Hello, I'm Angela Lansbury for Child Reach. You can become a Child Reach sponsor and not only personally touch the life of a needy boy or girl overseas, but also help the child's family and community achieve the goals they have set for themselves. And a little girl like this will never feel the agony of dysentery from dirty water. A child like this will be able to go to school to learn and grow.
The need to help. Children see it clearly because their hearts have 20/20 vision. For more information about Child Reach, call 1-800-578-0808. 1-800-578-0808.
Mom, can we call, please?